Imagine a quiet Tuesday morning in Silicon Valley. No press releases had been teased, no cryptic countdowns appeared on social media, and the typical hype cycle was eerily absent. Then, without warning, the digital ground shifted. A massive file drop hit Hugging Face and Kaggle simultaneously, sending shockwaves through every server room and developer basement on the planet. This wasn't just another incremental update or a minor patch to an existing system. This was the moment Google DeepMind decided to flip the script on the entire industry. They call it Gemma 4, and while the name sounds familiar, the reality of what just landed in our hands is nothing short of a silent earthquake. The tech world is still reeling from the realization that the era of guarded secrets and closed-door dominance is being dismantled from the inside out. For years, the narrative was simple. If you wanted the absolute frontier of artificial intelligence, you had to pay a toll. You had to subscribe to the giants, submit your data to the cloud, and play by their restrictive rules. Today, those rules were deleted. Gemma 4 represents a total architectural pivot. We aren't just talking about a faster chatbot or a more efficient language model. This is the first truly frontier-class open-source multimodal model. In the past, open source often meant almost as good as the paid version. It was the runner-up, the compromise for those who couldn't afford premium subscriptions. But Gemma 4 changes that definition entirely. It doesn't just process text, it lives in a world of images, audio, and complex video data, processing them all natively. This is the DNA of Gemini 1, 5 Pro, refined, distilled, and handed over for full developer freedom. Google DeepMind has shifted its entire strategy, moving from a position of protective gatekeeping to one of radical transparency. They are providing the weights, the architecture, and the freedom to build without an API leash. This is a deliberate move to empower the individual over the institution. The release was global and instantaneous. Whether you were browsing Vertex AI or scouring the latest repositories on Hugging Face, the presence of Gemma 4 was impossible to ignore. It is a bold statement that the access gap is closing. This is why it matters so deeply. The wall between big tech AI and homegrown AI has finally collapsed. You no longer need a $100 million server farm to experiment with the cutting edge. The power is moving from the boardroom to the bedroom coder, the small town entrepreneur, and the independent researcher. It is simply the Linux moment for artificial intelligence. Just as Linux became the bedrock of the modern internet by being open and adaptable, Gemma 4 is positioned to be the foundation for the next decade of digital innovation. It is an infrastructure of intelligence that belongs to everyone, but here is the part that many are overlooking in their haste to download the weights. While the multimodal features are grabbing the headlines, there is a hidden capability buried deep within the reasoning engine that Google didn't highlight in the initial marketing. Some early testers are calling it a ghost in the machine, a recursive logic loop that allows the model to self-correct in ways we've never seen in an open weights release. It is a level of advanced reasoning that bridges the gap between a tool and a partner. This logic engine solves complex math and coding problems that paralyzed previous versions of open models, rivaling the giants that charge hefty monthly fees. It is putting the capabilities of a supercomputer into a package that fits on your local hardware. Imagine having the collective power of 1,000 world-class researchers running on your local laptop. If you had that level of intelligence at your fingertips right now, what would you build first? Would you solve a localized problem in your community, or would you try to disrupt an entire industry? Before we continue exploring the technical depths of this beast, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This journey is only beginning. To summarize the core facts we are dealing with, Gemma 4 is here. It is natively multimodal, it is completely open for developers, and the old rules of AI development are officially dead. We are witnessing a transition from centralized corporate control to a world of local sovereignty, where the most powerful tool ever created by human hands is finally accessible to everyone. The closed AI establishment is on notice. The solopreneur is now the most dangerous person in the room. This isn't just a product launch, it's a declaration of independence for the digital age. The horizon has moved, and we are just starting to see what lies beyond it. The evolution of the Gemma family was a steady, deliberate climb that many in the tech world underestimated until it was too late. When the original Gemma releases first appeared, they were often viewed viewed with a sense of cautious skepticism. Observers wondered if Google was truly committed to the open source movement or simply providing crumbs from the master's table to satisfy market pressures. However, with the transition to the 2.0 series, the exponential growth and efficiency became impossible to ignore. These models started punching far above their weight class, proving that the architecture was maturing at a rate that outpaced raw scaling. It wasn't just about making models smaller. It was about making them smarter and more responsive to the needs of developers who lacked access to multi-million-dollar data centers. The exponential growth seen here represents a shift from quantity to quality in neural network design. This progress happened against the backdrop of an intense philosophical war within the tech community. The closed AI establishment, led by proprietary architectures like GPT-4 and Claude, argued that the most powerful models were too dangerous or too complex for public release. They built high walls of safety filters and subscription tiers, turning intelligence into a luxury commodity. Meanwhile, the open camp, championed by Llama and Mistral, fought for the idea that transparency was the only path to true innovation. For years, Google occupied a strange middle ground, often perceived as a conservative titan, prioritizing its own commercial ecosystem over the collaborative spirit of the open web. They were the gatekeepers of a walled garden, keeping their most advanced tools locked away. The release of Gemma 4 shatters that perception entirely. To understand the gravity of this shift, one must look closely at the Gemini connection. Gemma 4 is not a separate entity built from scratch. It carries the literal DNA of Gemini 1, 5 Pro. This inheritance grants it native multimodality, allowing it to understand the world through more than just text. It perceives images and decodes video frames as if it were seeing through human eyes. It also inherits that groundbreaking context window once exclusive to the most expensive enterprise models. Through distillation, Google DeepMind's researchers taught the smaller Gemma model to mimic the complex reasoning patterns of its much larger parent. It is as if the wisdom of a 1,000-page encyclopedia has been perfectly summarized into a pocket handbook without losing a single vital detail. This brings us to the strategic why behind this massive move. Google's infrastructure shift appears designed to disrupt the very foundations of the AI market. By providing a frontier-class model for free, they are commoditizing the intelligence that their competitors are trying to sell. This is a direct strike at the heart of the subscription-based economy. It is a tactical maneuver. If the basic building block of your competitor's product is suddenly free everywhere, their entire business model must change. Google is leveraging its research advantage to redefine the value of AI hardware, particularly for those using NVIDIA or Apple Silicon to run models locally. They are signaling that the software should be free because the real value lies in the hardware and the applications built upon it. In the context of 2024 and 2025, full developer freedom is the new gold standard. The access gap, the divide between those who can afford high-end AI and those who cannot, is effectively closed. Before today, if you wanted high-level reasoning, you had to pay a subscription and give away your data. Not anymore. For the first time, a solopreneur has the same technical capability as a well-funded startup. They have the rights to fine-tune, commercialize, and keep their data private. This is the birth of local sovereignty. But stay with me, because later I'll show you why this model makes the cloud optional for the first time in history. Your device is no longer just a window into someone else's computer, but a powerhouse of its own. Google isn't just joining the race. They have effectively moved the finish line while everyone else was still looking at the old one. While the rest of the industry was arguing about the cost of building the next big thing, Google decided to give the next big thing to everyone for free. The transition has been swift and brutal for those on the wrong side of the divide. As we look at the weights of Gemma 4, we see a future where the power of the few has finally been handed over to the many. To understand the true weight of this release, one must peer into the engine room of Gemma 4. The headline feature is the multimodal breakthrough, but the term itself doesn't do it justice. In the past, AI models were often patchwork systems where a text model was bolted onto a separate vision encoder. Gemma 4 represents a total departure from this restricted approach. It utilizes native multimodality, meaning the model was trained from day one to process text, images, audio, and video within the same neural space. It doesn't just describe an image, it perceives it. It doesn't simply transcribe audio, it hears the nuances of tone and environmental noise. This unified architecture allows for a level of cross-modal reasoning that was previously impossible in an open weights model. For example, you can feed it a video of a complex mechanical repair and ask it to write the code for a diagnostic tool based on what it sees in the third minute of the footage. The model isn't translating between different languages of data, it is thinking in a singular, multi-sensory stream that mimics human cognitive processing. This leads directly into the advanced reasoning engine, the logic core that sets Gemma 4 apart from its predecessors. Google DeepMind has successfully integrated chain of thought processing directly into the model's weights. This isn't just a prompting trick, it is a fundamental shift in how the model navigates logic. When faced with a complex mathematical proof or a sprawling software architecture bug, Gemma 4 doesn't just guess the next word. It simulates a path of reasoning, verifying internal steps before presenting a conclusion. This capability has long been the holy grail of open source development, the ability to solve high-level coding problems that would typically paralyze smaller models. It bridges the gap between a simple chatbot and a true digital architect capable of building and fixing its own foundations. The technical specifications of this architecture are equally staggering. Google has perfected the process of distillation, a technique where a massive teacher model, in this case the giant Gemini 1.5 Pro, trains a smaller student model like Gemma 4. Through this process, the student learns not just the answers, but the underlying reasoning patterns and knowledge densities of its much larger parent. The result is a model small enough to run on a standard consumer GPU or a high-end laptop, yet powerful enough to handle enterprise-level workloads. It's the ultimate efficiency paradox, achieving nearly 90% of the performance of a trillion-parameter giant packed into a tiny fraction of the size. This density of knowledge makes it an ideal candidate for edge AI, where processing happens directly on the device without the need for an internet connection. But the capabilities extend far beyond the screen. Gemma 4 is designed for the vision language action loop, a framework that allows the AI to be plugged directly into robotics and industrial automation. Because the model can see and reason in real time, it can act as the brain for a machine, interpreting physical environments and making decisions on the fly. This isn't a future possibility, it's a present reality, from autonomous drones to precision surgical robots. The unfiltered potential of an open weights model of this caliber is limitless. There are no API restrictions, no latency spikes caused by remote servers, and most importantly, total privacy for proprietary data. If a factory wants to automate its assembly line using sensitive internal blueprints, they can do so without ever uploading a single file to the cloud. This is like putting a supercomputer in your pocket, but one that speaks every human language and understands the visual world through every lens available. At first glance, this looks like just another set of tech specs. However, the way Gemma 4 handles long context retrieval is where the narrative takes a truly significant turn. The model can sift through hundreds of pages of documentation or hours of video to find a single, specific needle in a haystack with perfect accuracy. I will show you that data shortly. The shift from centralized to decentralized intelligence is not merely a change in hosting. It is an economic wrecking ball aimed directly at the walls of the current AI establishment. For the past several years, the industry narrative was clear. If you wanted cutting-edge performance, you had to pay the gatekeepers. The subscription model became the default, with companies charging $20 a month or more for access to their top-tier models. This created a recurring revenue stream that investors loved, but it also built a persistent digital divide. When Google DeepMind released the weights of Gemma 4, they effectively turned that entire model upside down. Why would a corporate department pay for thousands of recurring licenses when they can run a frontier-class model on their own servers for the cost of electricity? This move forces a radical reevaluation of how artificial intelligence is commoditized. It is a direct strike at the heart of the subscription-based economy, suggesting that in the near future, raw intelligence will be as free and accessible as a basic search query. This decentralization is a massive catalyst for the solopreneur and small-scale innovator. Previously, an individual developer with a great idea was often stifled by the immense overhead of API costs and the constant risk of being deplatformed by a larger provider. Now, that same developer has the power of 1,000 researchers on their local laptop. They can fine-tune Gemma 4 to become a specialized expert in niche fields like organic chemistry, boutique architectural design, or local government law. The barriers to entry that once protected tech giants have vanished. We are witnessing the democratization of high-end production, where the quality of an application is no longer determined by the size of the company's bank account, but by the creativity and skill of the person behind the code. Simultaneously, the hardware landscape is undergoing a tectonic shift. As the requirement for a constant cloud connection diminishes, the value of the physical device in your hand skyrockets. The secret winners in this launch aren't just the developers, but the architects of the silicon it runs on. Nvidia and Apple Silicon have become the new essential infrastructure. This is the dawn of the edge AI era, where your local hardware is the primary source of your digital power. Your GPU is no longer a peripheral, it is the core of your professional sovereignty. Every teraflop of local compute now represents a direct increase in your personal AI capacity, making local performance the most critical metric for the next generation of consumer electronics. In sectors where data is the most sensitive asset, such as healthcare and law, this shift is revolutionary. For years, these industries have been hesitant to fully embrace high-end AI due to the inherent risks of data exfiltration and third-party processing. Confidentiality is the cornerstone of their practice. With Gemma 4, a hospital can implement a multimodal diagnostic system that remains entirely within their secure air-gapped network. A law firm can ingest thousands of privileged documents for a discovery process without ever letting that data touch the public internet. This brings about a rebirth of privacy and security, where professional organizations can finally harness the most advanced tools available while maintaining total local sovereignty over their most critical data. The impact ripples even further into the global educational landscape. In many parts of the developing world, high-speed internet is either unreliable or prohibitively expensive, making cloud-based AI a luxury for the few. Gemma 4 changes this equation by making high-level intelligence portable. Imagine a personalized tutor for every student on Earth, running on a $200 tablet in a classroom without an internet connection. By lowering the hardware requirements and removing the subscription wall, Google is providing AI for the other 5 billion people. This is more than a product release. It is a global empowerment initiative that levels the playing field for human potential across every continent. If you realize how much this is going to change your career and the way the world functions, hit that subscribe button. We are tracking this shift in real time as it unfolds. But as we embrace this new era of freedom, we must also acknowledge the rising complexity of the path ahead. With this much power in anyone's hands, the question of safety takes a very different and far more urgent turn. When the guardrails are no longer centralized, the dark side of unfettered intelligence becomes a reality we must confront. We're diving into those challenges and the ethical crossroads of this new world next. The conflict at the summit of the artificial intelligence world has reached a boiling point, and the primary battlefield is the benchmark suite. To understand where Gemma 4 truly stands, we must look at the direct confrontation with Meta's Llama 4. For a long time, Llama was the undisputed king of the open source community, the gold standard for all other models. But Google DeepMind's latest entry has disrupted that hierarchy. In head-to-head comparisons of reasoning and coding, Gemma 4 isn't just competing, it's often setting the pace. The difference lies in multimodal accuracy. While other models feel like text engines with vision plugins, Gemma 4 functions as a unified mind that perceives the visual and textual world simultaneously. This brings us to the question dominating every tech forum: is this the GPT-4 killer? The data suggests the answer is yes. When we examine benchmarks like MMLU, Human Evil, and GSM-8K, the results are startling. Gemma 4 is delivering performance that matches or exceeds the reigning king of closed AI in several key categories. This was the barrier everyone thought would take years to break. The idea that an open-weight model, accessible to any developer with a decent GPU, could rival the flagship product of a multi-billion-dollar closed ecosystem is now documented reality. This shift proves that the advantage of scale is being neutralized by architectural elegance. One visceral advantage of this architecture is speed. In software development, latency is a failure state. Cloud models are subject to internet traffic and server load. Gemma 4, however, is optimized for edge AI execution. On hardware like Nvidia's RTX cards or Apple Silicon, the response time is breathtaking. It is essentially instantaneous. This changes the relationship between human and machine. When the AI responds at the speed of thought, it ceases to be a tool and becomes an extension of your own cognitive process. This fluid interaction is the catalyst for a new era of productivity where the friction of the digital interface disappears. The economic implications are equally staggering. Business owners are looking at performance per dollar as the ultimate metric. Moving from a subscription-based API model to a self-hosted Gemma 4 instance offers an ROI that is impossible to ignore. Companies previously spending thousands on tokens realize they can achieve the same results with a hardware investment. This is about financial and operational autonomy. Switching to Gemma 4 allows a business to scale its AI usage infinitely without increasing monthly fees, effectively ending the era of the AI tax. This ensures that advanced tools are no longer reserved for the wealthiest corporations, but power and low cost are useless if the model cannot be trusted. The hallucination factor was once the hurdle for AI reliability. To combat this, Google implemented grounding techniques within the weights. The model is more robust in factual retrieval and more cautious when faced with ambiguity. It doesn't just guess, it reasons through its internal knowledge base with skepticism. This reliability makes it a viable candidate for high-stakes environments where a single wrong answer has serious consequences. By reducing error frequency, Gemma 4 bridges the gap between an experimental tool and a professional instrument for enterprise deployment. The reaction from the developer community has been a frenzy. Across X, Reddit, and GitHub, the sentiment is clear. The balance of power has shifted. We see viral threads of developers showing Gemma 4 solving bugs that stumped the most famous closed models. The community has moved from cautious optimism to total empowerment. As one researcher noted, this model just beat models 10 times its size. It is not an evolution, it is a mutation. The keys to the kingdom are no longer in a Silicon Valley vault. They are on your hard drive right now, ready for you to build. You are the architect. The transition from the previous part leads us to the inevitable debate regarding the ethics of such profound freedom. When Google DeepMind decided to release Gemma 4 with its frontier-class reasoning and multimodal capabilities, they effectively dismantled the traditional gatekeeping model. This shift brings with it a complex reality. By providing a model that is essentially unfiltered and accessible on local hardware, the responsibility for safety moves from a central corporate server to the individual user. It is a gamble on the collective ingenuity of the human race. While the potential for misuse exists, the consensus among the architectural team was that the risk of centralized, restricted intelligence was far greater for the future of innovation. This move represents a fundamental shift in the AI safety paradigm, prioritizing transparency over the safety through obscurity model that has dominated the industry for years. What we are witnessing is the beginning of a fine-tuning explosion that will redefine every professional sector within days. Historically, fine-tuning a model of this caliber required massive infrastructure, but the efficiency of Gemma 4 makes this process accessible to almost anyone. Within 48 hours of its release, we will see thousands of specialized versions emerging on repositories like Hugging Face. There will be a version of Gemma 4 that has read every medical journal ever published, another that knows the intricacies of local building codes across every continent, and another that can assist an aerospace engineer in designing more efficient propulsion systems. The solopreneur no longer needs a venture capital-backed team to create industry-shaking software. They only need a clear vision and the weights of this model to build applications that rival enterprise-grade solutions. This brings us to a deeper philosophical question. Does Gemma 4 represent the final bridge to artificial general intelligence? While it may not be AGI in the sense of a self-aware entity, it represents a monumental step toward a universal reasoning agent. It is no longer just a better tool. It is a foundation. Because it can process vision, audio, and text natively, it can interact with the physical world in ways its predecessors could not. When you plug this brain into robotics or automated manufacturing systems through the vision language action loop, the line between software and physical intelligence begins to blur. We are moving toward a future where intelligence is not a service you buy from a provider, but a resource that exists everywhere, integrated into the very fabric of our everyday devices. Google has effectively burned the boats with this release. There is no strategic path back to the era of purely closed, guarded AI systems. By making Gemma 4 open source, they have forced every other major player in the industry to reconsider their own walls. If you can get frontier-level intelligence for free, the value proposition of a closed subscription model begins to evaporate. This is the Linux moment of the AI revolution, where the standard for the entire planet becomes an open, collaborative framework rather than a proprietary secret held by a few. The momentum has shifted entirely toward the community, and the gravity of that shift is pulling the entire tech industry into a new orbit that favors accessibility. The window to get ahead of this technology is closing rapidly. This is not a development you can afford to watch from the sidelines as a passive observer. Whether you are a developer, a student, or a business leader, the time to start building is today. Download the model, explore its weights, and test the limits of its reasoning on your own hardware. For the first time in human history, the most powerful tool ever created belongs to everyone, not just a handful of executives in Silicon Valley. It is a moment of unprecedented democratization where the gap between an idea and its execution has been reduced to nearly zero. Gemma 4 is the spark that has been dropped into a world ready to burn with new ideas. What you do with that fire is now entirely up to you. The world we woke up in this morning is officially gone, replaced by one where intelligence is a public utility and innovation is limited only by imagination. The era of gatekeepers is over and the era of the creator has begun, but this is just the beginning of our deep dive into this new architecture. If you think this shift is substantial, wait until you see what happened when we tested the hidden recursive coding mode. This hidden feature allows the model to optimize its own logic in real time, but that is a conversation for the next video.